It's Mock Draft Monday, and you know what that means. A whole new set of Kansas City Chiefs are coming to town. Who falls with the Kansas City Chiefs this week, right now on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Locked On Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. Check out another Locked On show for your next listen. Maybe the new scouting show, maybe the Bengals show. See what they're doing with Orlando. Lots that you can find out. This is going to be a fun day because I love Mock Draft Monday, and I get to do this one solo, so we're going to have a good time. We're going to get ready for that and see just what kind of deals we can swing as we're representing Brett Veach in the way that he goes about his business. So thank you for checking this out. I hope you're on YouTube. If you are, like, sub, and hit the bell. And also, we are available first, always on YouTube, and then the audio platforms. You can find us everywhere for free. We appreciate your time. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting. That's home of the Athletic Matrix and the Rogue APC draft guide that is coming out. And I have a deal for you guys right here. I do want to share with you. The code is Matrix LOC, and that gets you a nice discount off of the draft guide that we are putting our wrapping touches on. I hope to be able to announce that on RGR tonight. We'll make sure that we get that out to you as soon as possible, but you can pre-order now and use this code to get a great discount. You can also find my work on RGR Football as well as NFL33.com. And that's all looking around the league. And the league is what you have to understand when you're getting into a mock draft. So what I did this week was set it up as though it's following real life. The tackles are becoming more and more difficult to acquire. So I felt that this had to be a scenario where the Kansas City Chiefs trade up. There's really just not much way around that. And they have a commodity that I felt was important to use because I find it difficult to see where the value is going to come. And that's not to say that there isn't value across the roster. But before I get to that point, I do want to mention that, hey, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. It connects you with a licensed therapist you can take anywhere along your journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today and get 10% off of your first month. And mental health might be helpful if you're going through this process of continual scenarios around mock drafting and seeing what the Chiefs can get done in what they're trying to accomplish in their first round. So I'm trying to use the commodity here that the Chiefs have that clearly has been downgraded in the last year, and that is the running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was a first-round selection a few years ago. And I think the Chiefs have found that, yes, they can keep him on the roster and they can try to get some continued benefit from him while he's on his first-year contract. But if they can find a trade partner that's looking for back depth that could help them move up in this draft in the first round, that's exactly what they want to do. And so I was able to fish around and get some things done along that particular path. And I'll share with you here in a second. It was pretty cake in that, what was it, 3 quarterbacks in the top 4 picks, not unexpected to tell you the truth. Maybe the order of them threw people for a loop, but there's plenty to be expected in terms of quarterbacks going early. That actually helps the Chiefs and set them up to be in a position where the positions of need the Chiefs have still had players on the board, obviously after the first 7-ish picks, and they're able to move around. And this is what we were able to accomplish. In the first round, you can see they went off the board pretty quickly. Jackson Smith-Njigba, who I think is the best fit, the best receiver on this draft, went early at 6. And then the tackle started to go. Paris Johnson went at number 9, which sent up a red flare for me. Paris, I think, is very good in a solid left tackle, a pure left tackle, as is Broderick Jones, who was my target. And you can see here, as it went on, we were able to see a couple of defensive, not only edges, but interior players come off the board in Kalijah Kancey, Lucas Van Ness. And then it got to 15, and Peter Skoronski went off the board. And that's when I pulled the trigger and started negotiating. And it was not to get Joey Porter. It was not to get Mike Mayer or Deonte Banks. Myles Murphy, I was actually talking to the Bucs. He was a possibility here, but didn't work out. So I let it go a little bit farther, and that's when we got to the Bucs pick. They made Myles Murphy, and I paused it again. Couldn't get a deal done with the Seattle Seahawks. That may be true in reality. They ended up taking Quentin Johnson, who the Chiefs have had in for a visit. And I think that's important because we're going to talk about that later as it narrows down their options and what they're trying to do. But I was able to complete a trade and get up to 21. Now, the trade partner is not always what's important here. It's a little bit out of left field, but you can see here in this scenario, 2 Georgia players go back to back in Broderick Jones. The Chiefs were able to select at 21 thanks to Los Angeles Chargers giving up their pick and moving back. And the very next pick was to the Baltimore Ravens, which was Nolan Smith, who I think is the last viable edge rusher on this class. I like BJ Ojulari. He did go at 24, but that is a bit of a reach for me. I do have him as a high second-round pick, not a first-round pick. So that narrowed things down. I felt like we got what we needed to get done. And again, one of the top 3 tackles. And I personally like Broderick a little bit better than the others, but Skoronski and Paris Johnson, along with Broderick Jones, are the consensus top 3. It really doesn't vary from there. And beyond that, you get into an issue of trying to make sure that you're in position to get Darnell Wright or Anton Harrison. Harrison, you can see here, went at 28. So had we stayed put, the Chiefs would have been out of luck there. And I think that's what's really worth making this trade for. Now, the other option was Jordan Addison was on the board, and that is a toss-up because he is a top 3 wide receiver on my board, and I do think he could do some things for the Kansas City Chiefs. He doesn't have to line up in the slot as much as Jackson Smith and Jigba does, so I think in terms of being versatile and the ability out there to fit in the Chiefs' offense, I think there is a little bit more of that. I was torn. Really, this was aimed towards getting an edge or a tackle, but the wide receiver was there, and I hemmed and hawed for a little bit. In the end, pulled the trigger on Broderick Jones and let the chips fall where they may, and they did. We did see him go next. BJ comes off the board. Then you get Anton Harrison. And then the top tight end on my board is Dalton Kincaid. He did go in this first round as well. All in all, the trade value, I think, worked out for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they were able to get a player that is certainly on their first round board at a position of need. And I think that's the double duty there. So what happens next? How did we clean up the rest of that? And that's where it comes in. You got to have your brains about you. And this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. So I do want to make sure that we're thinking about those type of concepts. And for BetterHelp, they help you get to know your process better and get through the issues you're dealing with, because they're always growing and they're always changing, and it's a lifelong process that they're trying to help you with. That is what they are for. And because BetterHelp is there for you, not just in the way they go about things, but all these people, millions of people have benefited from therapy, and you can do that as well. They do help you along in making a connection with a personal therapist, and that's important. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. They can do everything you need. It's entirely online, makes life easy that way. It's convenient, it's flexible, and it's suited to your schedule, not the therapist's schedule. That's important to remember as well. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist. You can switch therapists if you don't have that vibe or you don't connect in that way. You can do that at any time with no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon today, and you get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. I need better help as well. And so I moved on to how we continue to build this roster next. And as we see, I moved things around quite a bit. This is the value. And this is what I was referring to before. Was able to get Broderick Jones at 21, but I did give up Clyde Edwards-Helaire and 31 to go up to 21. That's a 10-point jump. That was a pretty meager cost for what I think in reality, you probably had to give up a 4th-round pick. Maybe you could get away with a 5th-round pick, but in this scenario, didn't have to do that, so I wrote it out. That brings us back, and then I was able to make another trade, and that's really what you can see on the screen. If you guys are subbed over on YouTube, make sure you check out the video version because you can see this all on screen, and we appreciate that. Leave your comments about how you think this has gone so far in the video here on the YouTube comments and in the reviews on Spotify and Apple. I got in a position where there were a couple of things that I wanted to gun. The edges that I had as 63 and better values were not there at 63. We were kind of in a tough position at that point. because of the run. There were some corners that went, but it did emphasize the defense a little bit more than we've been seeing as of late. So I got multiple offers at 63 to move back. And what ended up happening, it was from the LA Rams, who are pick starved because they've been giving their picks away for the last several years. And so they were happy to just swap the seconds and thirds. And I ended up giving them 2 7ths. So for a team that needed volume, they were willing to make those swaps. We moved back from the second, we moved up from the third, and compressed our region that we were taking 2 picks in. Doing that purposefully to try and take what I was hoping was going to be an edge and a wide receiver possibility. We let that run, and the 2 edges that I still had available that I thought were worth a 77+ grade had gone off the board. One being Derek Hall, who I do think Spags is going to like. Obviously, Miles Murphy went earlier. The power-based type guys that Steve Spagnuolo enjoys were already off the board. So started looking at where was the best talent. And that comes back to, again, the list of the Chiefs' visits. And I come back to Rashee Rice. Smaller school guy, obviously, at SMU, but they've had him in. They seem to like him, and he was available here. Now, there were a number of wide receiver options here. There were not many edges. So I had to bite the bullet and go back to offense. It's been offense heavy in this draft, which is not something I was terribly happy about, but this is the way that the draft fell and the cookie crumbled, so we had to run with it. Took Rashee Rice, came back 8 picks later, and took Cedric Tillman. Now this wide receiver room is filled out. It's very young, but it's diverse. You have some power type guys. You have a sizable guy in Cedric Tillman. You have some speed. You have some underneath receivers. You have a bit of everything. And I think that makes a good room that Patrick Mahomes can continue to increase the way that he spreads the ball around and get things done. That was the goal, and we accomplished it. So we feel pretty good about that. I felt like Tillman is a guy that can fit in this offense and be the heir to MVS eventually, learn the ropes. I like his game, and he's more athletic than he's given credit for when healthy. There has been an injury history with him, so there's a slight hesitation there. I had A.T. Perry on the board as well, but I've selected him in the past, and so I'm trying to vary this up about what some of the scenarios are. So I elected not to go with A.T. Perry in this situation. But I finished out pick 77 where we were with Cedric Tillman. Chiefs end up getting that wide receiver room built out. They've got tackle, they've got weapons. We've done a very good job of getting talent back into the offense, continuing to retool it every year like we expect the Kansas City Chiefs to do. It's an important concept because they need to do it. But I had to be pretty focused on the next pick. And so as we did that, I came back, and our next pick is at 122. And there was a player there in Mike Morris from Michigan who can be an edge. I think he can play in at 3-tech as well. He can do a little bit of everything. He's not the bendy type. He is another power-based player that fits what Spags would like. And I've seen him generally going in the top 100. So I felt like this was a bit of a fall and good value for what the Chiefs were looking for. So at 122, I felt like there's no way I can pass that up. And given that we've been very, very light on the defense to this point, we had to go make sure that we bring some fresh talent onto that defensive front in particular. So I felt good about having that option. And I really wanted to go grab Mike Morris because he was there at 122. But there was more fish to fry. There always is. There always are. And that led us into a couple of other scenarios that we're going to get into. If you were betting that it was going to be defense heavy from now, you'd probably make some money. And if you were going to lay that action, I have an idea where you can do it. Because right now, you guys want to check out our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, Grand Slams, no-hitters, baseball is starting to fire up. There's no better place to get in the action on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can set up, make your way to the plate, take a swing with a no-sweat first bet. If you do that and your bet does not come through, you can earn yourself up to $1,000 in bonus bets on that account. You just have to go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up and place your first bet. If it loses, that up to $1,000 back in bonus bets is what you can earn. So don't miss your chance right now with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you join FanDuel today as a new customer. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can see it here on the screen and check it out. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, pretty much anybody else that's laying action. So check them out. I enjoy the scenarios, and I know this has not been so far a quote-unquote chalk draft. At times, you have to roll with the punches. And quite frankly, in real life, in reality, the Chiefs have to roll with the punches as well. And so that's what we're going to demonstrate here. We come back at 134, and we had a chance to take a guy on the local radar that I think gives you the upside for having the ability to grow into the role at the edge. We know they have Charles Omenihu to man the edge opposite George Karlaftis. I do think there's a veteran in the future in a cheap free agent signing just before camp. We won't know that for quite a while. But in having a developmental guy that you feel can bring in, that makes the offseason, the OTA portion, a great founding ground to see where your talent's going to go. Isaiah McGuire, the Mizzou edge that I think can walk onto this roster and put in some meaningful stats. He's got guys that resemble his body type on this roster that can help. One being Omenihu. I do like how Omenihu was in this similar situation. Didn't have the praise of a top 100 guy coming in, and he's grown into his role. And so I think you could see something similar along those lines with Isaiah McGuire. Then you come back with Broderick Martin. And you all know that I have a tendency to check out Western Kentucky film. I have had a friend down there in the past, no longer with the program, but I did get film on them, and I do like some of their players. Broderick Martin's one of them, and the Chiefs like him as well. He's been into the facility. I talked about the top 30 visits last week. If you missed that, go back and grab that show because we are 5 days a week covering all of this. And Chris should be back this week here in a little bit. I just want to get this mock out while I had you guys to myself. So don't worry about that. But Broderick Martin being in the facility, I feel is a plus. And I do feel he has upside that the Chiefs can enjoy and can plan around. It's the loss of Colin Saunders, honestly, that you got to find some spark. Turk Wharton's back. Derek Notty's back. I hope that Turk can continue and pick up his progression where he left off. That's no guarantee, though. It is an injury that whenever you're coming back from, you have to make sure that you kind of build that into the process, and it's not necessarily a given. So we're going to take a chance. We're going to add to that interior defensive line group and see what we can get in Broderick Martin. I have faith in him, and I think he could be a nice addition. Then we come back, and we all know the Chiefs have been starved at the outside tackle position, and we need to make sure that we cover that. This is the 178th pick, that the Chiefs had in the 6th round. And this is where it comes into projection. Trevor Reed is the other tackle that I was considering here because they were both on the board, and both of them have high developmental grades on my board in our scouting from Rogue APC. And remember, you can get the draft guide over there by going to Rogue APC and using the code MATRIXLOC. You can pre-order that now. It should be out very soon, maybe even tonight by the time you hear this. We are working away to finish up our last tweaks and make sure we get you the most information that we can right away. So check that out. And Warren McClendon, as well as Carter Warren and Trevor Reed, are all interesting players in this kind of range, in the high 100s, just about up to 210. So this was a decision, and I went with experience. And Warren McClendon has been on 2 national championship teams. He was a starting right tackle for this last national championship team in Georgia. And remembering that we were able to secure Broderick Jones in the 1st round, this is his teammate and his bookend at Georgia. And I think that helps the transition. I think having 2 guys that have played together in the past does, I think, speed the transition into the NFL. And I do think that Warren McClendon is a little bit underrated. It looks like they have him rated here. PFF does it at 238. I have him in this high 100 range, or in the 180 to 200 range. This is a perfect spot for him. So now the Chiefs have 2 tackles they believe that they can work on that are young, one that can slot in to start and one that can back them up and I think eventually become the swing tackle. Warren has experience on both sides, and that is attractive, I think, to most teams that are looking for a non-starter in the 6th round. And that brings us to the Chiefs' last pick of this particular mock draft, and that is Evan Hull. I know that there's a lot of talk about how do you work through adding to the backfield with Isaiah Pacheco now that he's kind of taken the lead. And earlier, obviously, the first thing in this draft was we traded away Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I do think that Jerick McKinnon is destined for a comeback here with this team again, another late offseason signing just before camp, something like that, like we saw last season. But I think Evan Hull is a guy that has a little bit of everything. He catches the ball very, very well, and that's the big plus here. Again, not to just keep harping on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but that was one of the big things that he did coming out of college. This isn't a 1st-round selection. It's a 6th-round selection, and that's the difference, and that's the reason why. Now, I do think that they'll add some UDFA running backs as well because I think the running back group for the 6th, 7th UDFA range is very, very thick, and I think that they can have their choice. But Evan Hull is a guy that I think can do a lot of what they want and be a number 2 back to Isaiah Pacheco and give a little bit of change of pace. He's more athletic than he's given credit for, and the pass catching is just off the charts. So I do feel very comfortable with him in this offense, and I'm excited about it. So just to go over it one more time, we trade up to 21, get Broderick Jones in the 21 spot at the offensive tackle spot. A trade up very similar to the situation that happened with Trent McDuffie. We come back. We trade back out of 63 because we didn't have a lot of the talent that we thought, and we had guys down the board that we were able to pick up after having acquired a compression here. Move from 63 and 95 to 69 and 77, and we do pick up Rashee Rice and Cedric Tillman, fill out that that wide receiver room. We came back later in the 4th with 2 edges. Isaiah McGuire as well as Mike Morris, who I think can play inside as well. You get that nice kind of balance. And then Broderick Martin in the 5th gives you another interior pass rusher that I think can help out. Then you come back with the swing tackle possibility, developmental player Warren McClendon, and you finish it off with a tailback that you think can get into camp and make some noise in Evan Hull from Northwestern. That is a pretty good haul, and I'm pretty happy with the way that it came out. How do you feel? Leave your comments here down below and put them on the Spotify reviews and the Apple reviews. We'd love to know what you think and the way that I ran this one. Now, Chris might tear it apart. He'll be back later in the week, and we'll see if he has that. And he'll be doing next week's Mock Draft Monday, and we're going to continue mock drafting all the way up until the draft. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Check out another Locked On show this week. The scouting show is up. The NFL draft show is up. Check all those guys out. Go over to NFL 33, and you can see a lot of my work and my team's work on this draft, in particular prospects. That's where my draft board will be released the week before the draft. So be prepared for that as well and get signed up. You can pre-order that draft guide right now. Thanks for your time today, and we will definitely be back with you tomorrow.